Welcome to Indie Film Podcast.
This week we're talking about how to source film gear without selling a kidney.
In other words, renting versus buying your equipment.
We'll talk about our own DIY equipment hacks.
Some equipment purchases that maybe we regret.
What would we buy if we had $2,000 to spend on equipment?
And some creative solutions from famous filmmakers who inspire us. I'm Victoria.
And I am Chuck. Let's first start with, do you need two kidneys to make a movie?
I'm not exactly sure that you need two kidneys to make a movie. I don't know if any internal organs, maybe a brain and a heart, are required.
They definitely are. And there is actually a famous example of someone who had a kidney removed. And that person is Steven Spielberg. You may have heard of him. So in February 7th of 2000,
yes,
Steven Spielberg had a kidney removed. And here is his filmography prior to the kidney removal. We have Jaws, E.T., the Indiana Jones trilogy, Hook, Jurassic Park, Schindler's List, Saving Private Ryan.
Some big ones.
Yes.
Some big ones.
And when his kidney function was reduced by 50%, he released AI, Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, The Adventures of Tintin, Bridge of Spies, excuse me.
I think the plural would be better.
It may have helped. I don't know. The Post, Ready Player One, The Fabelmans. So
I have heard good things about The Fabelmans.
Okay. I actually haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it either.
I've kind of, actually the second Jurassic Park, I stopped being as into Steven Spielberg's films. But I did weight that a little bit heavily.
Yeah.
Because you don't know what's going on with Steven Spielberg. But obviously, very strong career at the beginning.
But he did have that whole 1943 whatever movie beforehand. And he won't even admit that he made it. So
well,
take it with
on.
a grain of salt.
So, yeah, I don't think people should sell their kidneys for equipment regardless of the situation. So let's help people out.
So that is an internet rumor that Robert Rodriguez sold a kidney to fund El Mariachi. And turns out that's actually just a rumor. He did not actually sell a kidney to fund that movie, but he did enlist in medical trials for about a month.
Oh, nice.
And got the majority of the $7,000 budget by doing that. So, if you want to sell off bits and pieces of your body to science, I guess go for it. But I don't think clinical trials pay that well anymore.
Probably not. I don't know, actually.
I don't know.
That's all speculation. So if any of you out there want to fund your next film by signing up for prescription trials, let us know how that works out for you. Let's talk about some other famous film creative solutions as far as getting around maybe some lower quality equipment, some budget equipment.
Yeah.
Obviously, Blair Witch is a famous example of the found footage.
Yeah, but then Paranormal Activity took it to a different level as well with just security camera footage too. And
yeah. So horror genre, they have leaned into the lower quality equipment. Do you have any other examples of people hacking things?
It is technically a horror film as well, so I guess I'm not exactly straying that far. But my favorite is Sam Raimi, right? Who holds a special place in my heart. And for Evil Dead 1 and 2, when creating the point of view shots for the evil spirit or the evil presence as it's kind of going through the forest, they actually they rigged up the camera on a 2x4.
Okay.
They did sand down the edges of the 2x4 to make it more of a handle-looking shape, and they had two crew people on either side with the camera set up in the middle, and they're just running through the forest with a 2x4 to give it kind of that shaky but still movement, but it meant that they could all three run together to get the shot so that it was lined up and everyone was happy with how the shot looked.
Oh, nice.
I thought it was really entertaining, and that's a really creative solution. And I would be lying if I said I hadn't, sat in the middle of a hardware store on the floor just trying to piece different pieces of pipe together in the hopes that I can create my own Steadicam. So, you do what you got to do.
Yes. Those solutions, you hear about the famous ones.
Yeah.
But you don't hear about the ones that don't work out so well. I actually kind of came up with a couple options. This was thanks to my brother, Elliot, who is a huge fan of films. Yeah. He reminded me that in the early 2000s, there were a lot of films that tried to jump on the digital bandwagon too soon.
Oh.
So first example that I had to go back and review it again to see how rough it looked. But 28 Days Later.
Oh, I haven't. Don't they have another sequel of that coming out now? That's like 28 years later.
Yeah,
or something?
it's a. I don't know how many films they have in that series, but I did watch the first one years when it came out, and they filmed that on a Canon XL1.
Okay.
It was it was a $8 million budget film, and the Canon XL1 had the original the MSRP of $3,700.
Wow.
And this was a mini DV cam.
Oh.
So they shot that film basically in 480p. So if you go back and watch the first in this series of films, 28 Days Later, it looks pretty rough by today's standards.
Oh, that's kind of... But again, of course, it's the horror genre.
Yeah, pretty fun.
Of course it is.
But this was one that my brother was very proud to have remembered, and that was Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones.
Okay.
They used an early Sony digital camera.
Really?
And they shot it in 1080p.
Okay.
Less than that because they were going cinema aspect ratio.
Oh.
And I pulled up some of the specs on the camera that they used. It was a Sony Cine Alta HDW F900.
Okay, I have never heard of that and will never remember that.
Yeah, it was a really early 2K camera, essentially. Okay. Max frame rate, 24 frames per second. And bit color depth was 8-bit. It was shooting in 8-bit. And the stops of dynamic range that it had was around the 7 to 8 stop range, which if you're unfamiliar with that, I think a Blackmagic like pocket 4K today is shooting at right around 12 to 13 stops of dynamic range. And each stops are exponential. So if you go up one stop, you're doubling the amount of information that you have available to you. So it was very compressed. But if you go back and watch the early Star Wars trilogy, not the early one, but this is the first one that was filmed digitally. So Episode 2, you can see that like the quality, they used a lot of green screen, but the quality on the actual actors was a little bit pixelated. It's kind of fun.
What was the one before that then? Because
they shot that on film. They shot Star Wars Episode 1 on film.
That was the first one that they did digitally?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right.
That was a little hack that they tried to use, but they dove into it a little soon. You can watch Episode 2. It's pretty fun.
You know what?
Check it out.
Some people had to eventually pave the way and walk so that now everyone with an Apple or Android device can run.
Oh, yes. Very true.
It was a requirement.
Yeah. I mean, literally that Sony cam that they shot on for Star Wars, I guarantee most people's phones would have a similar dynamic range. But it does show that how important it is to learn how to light your scene and know the equipment, know the limitations of the equipment, because you're not going to be able to shoot Star Wars Episode 2 because you have the newest iPhone. Sorry, there's a lot more going into it. But with that caveat, should we talk about renting versus buying equipment?
Yeah, because I've rented equipment in the past, and I am a fan of it. I do think it's important to do, especially if there's gear you want to test out before you throw however much money at it, right?
Okay.
Because the last thing you want is having this dream lens in mind, but it's, a $1,600 lens, and you're like, do I really want to splurge on this? You could rent it for, $30-$40 a day. Test it out for a weekend, do a quick shoot, see how it goes, see how it feels. And then that way, if you hate it, you're only out like $60 to $80 as opposed to $1,600. So I do think that renting is important. I don't know if it's the best long-term strategy if you want to build out your own kit to be able to shoot quickly, because when you're renting gear, you got to wait for shipping time.
Yeah.
So there's a little give and there's a little bit of take, but I do think it's really valuable for trying stuff out.
I think so too. I want to put like an asterisk on renting as well, because if you're just starting out, I think it's really important that you learn how something works.
Yeah.
Until you learn the ins and outs of one camera or one piece of gear, one field recorder, a specific lens, it's going to be really hard for you to learn a new one. So if you're renting something and you don't have much experience, that's going to be a little bit trickier. I would encourage
my favorite microphone story when I rented those lav mics for a shoot and I didn't really understand how the Zoom recorder because I hadn't really used. I never really cared about audio. Sorry. And this was my first time having a Zoom recorder and I did not understand how the mic inputs on it worked and did not pull any of that lav audio.
Yeah, you're always going to be disappointed in how a piece of equipment works if you don't know how it works.
Yeah.
It's a huge caveat. I kind of want to throw a shout out to sharegrid.com.
Yeah.
Because we're in the Boise area. ShareGrid is kind of an Airbnb or a Turo for film and camera equipment.
Nice.
And so if you do want to rent something, and the reason I bring up the Boise area is we don't really have a equipment rental facility here.
There once upon a time was Idaho Camera.
But they went out of business during the pandemic. Yeah, they're toast. So, which is kind of a bummer.
Because Best Buy does not have the selection I need.
No, they do not. Or, there's equipment rental agencies that'll mail you stuff, which is what we have to do here if we want specific equipment. But ShareGrid, there are some local people here in our area that have production companies, small, medium, and large, and then they'll just put their equipment for rent on that. The bummer with that is, because of the size of the market we're in, when I'm looking for audio gear, there's really almost nothing on there that's of any value to me.
Because you already own most of the audio gear.
I own what I need,
Boise.
and the really high quality stuff is harder to source. So,
though, that is kind of one thing I want to throw out there as far as this whole renting versus buying equation here.
Yeah.
And I know I helped brainstorm the questions for the podcast today, so I am at fault for this. But I feel like it actually does exclude an important third option.
Which is?
Borrow.
Yeah, definitely borrow if you can.
Yeah, because there are so many and I assume that either we're just really, really lucky here and our community is incredibly supportive and amazing, which, to be fair, they are. They're awesome. I'm biased. But I assume other places outside of, LA or Atlanta or wherever, if you're in a smaller area, and you're being a part of your community and you're going to these screenings and you're seeing other people's work, you're kind of getting an idea for what equipment people have, what they have available. And I bet that some of the people are really generous and would let you borrow their stuff if you needed to, especially if you just wanted to test it out or you're finally needing to shoot something anamorphic and I have no anamorphic lenses, so I call Danny and hope he's willing to let me borrow something or, whatever the situation may be. I feel like borrowing is an important part of this, especially since you could also borrow styles and techniques and creative solutions. So again, shameless plug for community theater. You want to see how to do some weird proper costuming stuff and you don't know how to make that happen or a weird practical effect, go see how your local theater did it and they'll probably just teach you too.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you are in a market where you're a little bit more remote, like where we are here in Boise, you are going to have a lot of people that did have to buy some stuff that is sitting and collecting dust because they're not using it every single day.
No.
And yeah, that's a great solution. Definitely ask if you can borrow. Obviously, that's the cheapest.
Yes.
That's the cheapest option. I also wanted to talk about used equipment because I've definitely gone down that road quite a bit. I feel like used equipment is super helpful for microphones and lenses.
Yep, every time.
And if you do see something used that pops up, I never see it as losing money because a lot of times if you find a good deal on a used microphone or a used lens, grab it if you can, try it out. And if you don't like it, you can usually resell it for pretty close to the same price.
Yeah, they're not going to lose their value super quickly.
Versus field recorders or actual camera bodies, which just go out of date within a few years in most cases. Maybe not field recorders as much, but definitely I feel like camera bodies were kind of on an exponential growth curve right now.
Can't we be at that point already where camera bodies are set so I can stop having to budget to replace my camera every few years? Aren't we there yet? aren't we at the pinnacle? Can we just...
I think...
How many more pixels are you actually going to notice, especially if it's playing on a phone screen?
Good point. Vertical video. I want the highest resolution.
I need 12K for this vertical video.
Well, then you can get like 12 or what would that be? 6 vertical videos right next to each other.
You can do it
in one recording session. But no, I actually kind of like how the camera equipment is improving so fast. I will say that at the top end, maybe not as much. If you look at camera systems like Red and Ari, high-end Canon, high-end Sony, those cameras are, a Blackmagic makes like a 12K. I don't know how much more you really need than 12K. But the nice thing is that they're figuring out some of these cameras in smaller and smaller packages that record really high quality video that you can lug around very easily, which is conducive to being able to practice shooting things.
Which is why I refuse to throw away the DJI stabilizer.
Okay.
I have a newer one that has a higher weight capacity, but I'm not getting rid of that older one yet because I believe that one day cameras are going to be light enough I can use it again.
Oh, nice.
Because it was great and it worked really well.
Yes.
So I'm not getting rid of it yet.
Yeah, some of that stuff.
Which means it's available to borrow if anyone's in town and needs to borrow one because it's just sitting there collecting dust.
I bet it'll hold my GH6. It's pretty light.
It might actually. It might. Yeah. There you go. Cool. You can borrow it.
Do you have any other advice for renting versus buying before we move on to some DIY hacks we've done?
No, I think those are the exact same things. I feel like my favorite place to find lenses, pawn shops. Love it. Because yes, online looking for the refurbished option is always great. But even in Boise, we have pawn shops.
Yeah.
So we may not have a B&H, but I can go find some lenses. Now, whether or not I have an adapter for all of them is a different story, but that's fine.
And old vintage lenses can be really cool too. And
they're
sometimes
so pretty.
You can get them for whatever the current cost of a hit of meth is right now. I don't know how it works at pawn shops, but you can get yourself an old cool like Nikon lens or we have a
Konica.
Konica. Yeah, we have an old Konica lens that is absolutely gorgeous. It's an f1.2. We sourced it from my father who had this camera that he used in the 60s.
Yeah.
And we got an adapter for it, popped it on our Blackmagic, and it was like, oh, wow, that looks so good.
Because it doesn't always come down to the glass, but like you can get away with maybe your camera being a little bit out of date if your lens is really nice.
Yeah. And if you look at some of the stuff that we shot for Treasure Valley Live, which was a live music series we did in here, when we upgraded to the Blackmagic 4K, which shoots 12-bit RAW, we put just a Panasonic lens on that. And then we used our Sony A6000, which is a really old mirrorless just pocket camera, and we put that nice Konica lens on it, and it was holding up. It was punching above its weight with that lens on there.
Okay.
Did not look as good as the Blackmagic, but it was still, like a 8-bit camera shooting in 1080p.
It still looked a lot better than the kit lens that came with it.
Oh, yes, definitely. Definitely. Those kit lenses can be real rough.
Don't get me wrong. It's nice to have because at least then this is a lens that fits my camera and I can film or shoot something.
Yes.
But yeah, you probably want to get different lenses.
Mm-hmm. That's the first big expense. But hey, they usually hold their value pretty well.
But to be fair, a lot of those like borrow lenses, lens rentals, all those online places, they do oftentimes sell off their old gear. And it's not just lenses, though the names would make you think that it is. But they have camera bodies, they've got lights, and which is really nice to get lighting gear at a discount.
Oh, yeah.
Like they take anything that's got maybe a little bit too much superficial damage on it, or they've just got overstock and it's not renting out as much as it used to anymore. And you can buy it pretty cheap.
Oh.
So I found entire dolly systems on there before.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I almost bought it. I didn't do it, but I wanted to.
One key is what I try to do is have a list of equipment that I need or that I need and want.
Two different things.
Keep an eye on places like B&H, KEH.com. They sell just mostly used gear and Adorama camera. Yeah. And then obviously like Amazon and just the local marketplaces. And then if I'm checking that every week or so for the stuff that I want/need, usually something pops up in like a month or two at a deal that is too good to pass up, which I guess that happens a lot, but
It does.
We get a little gear hungry. Do you have some examples of situations where you've MacGyvered your own gear that actually worked?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of my first Steadicam, and Steadicam is very generous, but I did in Sharpie write the word Steadicam on it, so
It's official.
I think it was official.
Nice.
So this was college for me, so very early 2000s, and you couldn't go buy a DJI stabilizer for a reasonable price at that point, right?
Makes sense.
It just wasn't there, it wasn't available. I think Amazon still only sold books, really.
Right
so
on.
like your options were limited.
Did you buy a book on how to build a Steadicam?
I did not, but this was the early rough days of Reddit as well.
Oh, cool.
And I think it was Reddit. It was a forum. So I'm assuming Reddit, but I guess I don't know, that had a bunch of how-to guides on basically MacGyvering your own stuff. So they had one for a jib that you could build yourself with primarily a very large, like the plumbing PVC, not plumbing PVC, but the outside your sprinklers go through it type of PVC.
Okay,
so
right
it's
on.
got like a 5-6 inch diameter on it. Mm-hmm. And my favorite was the Steadicam because I knew I had weight plates from my gym set at my house.
Okay.
So I just needed to find enough pieces of pipe that fit together, and one of them needed at the very center at the top, I just needed to have a threaded screw in it.
Okay.
And in the very first iteration, did I just use hair ties to strap a tripod shoe basically to the bottom of it so that it could clip in my camera? Yes, I did. Did that make it very safe? No. But the second rendition did get better, and it was actually a part of the entire thing. And yeah, it was just all these different metal pipes with enough counterweight at the bottom. You just slid off the bottom like closure bit and slid on some weight plates because it was really thin, narrow pipe, and then screwed it back on, and you were good to go.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and it softened the movements. It actually worked pretty well. I was really happy with it.
We tried to build our own Steadicam. Not build our own, excuse me. We bought the least expensive one we could find where it was just one of those weight balance ones.
Yeah.
But our camera was so light that we couldn't balance it. And so we just went into, my dad famously has a garage and 2 sheds full of miscellaneous tools and equipment and stuff that he just hasn't thrown away. So we went in there and found like some old fishing weights, and we just masking taped them like behind the camera.
Just so that it would actually counterweight it as opposed to throw it completely off its axis.
Exactly.
Nice.
So yeah, because we couldn't make it heavy enough with the camera to actually be able to work as a Steadicam, but it still didn't work. It was pretty awful. But we did do the PVC pipe thing.
Okay.
For a dolly.
Nice.
And that we were never able to get to work because we built just a square of PVC pipe, giant, I don't know, like 16 feet or so. And then we made the letter H with PVC pipe to go over the top of our rectangle, and took an old pair of rollerblades and then removed those wheels and then screwed them onto the PVC pipe, the H, so that it would just roll over the top of it. But the issue was because they were used wheels, the wheels were so rough, so beat up from being on hard surfaces that one, it was a little too bumpy, and then 2, it was just so noisy.
That's what I was going to worry about.
We couldn't get
how loud
audio.
Is this?
Yeah, and that's something to those dolly systems. You got to be careful because if you aren't taking care of your wheels, they do squeak or they do get stuck or it might get a little bumpy, even on the ones that you pay for. So take good care of those. But yeah, it never worked for us.
That is my biggest equipment purchase regret, I would say. I was looking for a cheap way around a dolly, and those little 3 sets of wheels you've got that are supposed to just let you clip your tripod into it and then you can move it around.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, if you're on like Berber carpeting and nowhere else.
Yeah.
It's too bumpy, it's too shaky. You notice all the movement everywhere, and if the wheels can even roll. So
yeah, those are maybe functional at the tech industry. The tech firm I used to work for
that had the Berber carpeting over the concrete.
They had a studio, and so we got away with being able to just roll the tripod around.
Yeah.
And I have bought those for my tripod, and they never work in real life.
No, I was trying to take it across a hardwood floor. Oh my God. It was so loud and so bumpy and just like you're just watching the camera jitter and jump as it follows these people around. I'm like, I can't use any of this footage. This is worthless.
The one piece of equipment that we built that actually did work, though, was a jib made out of tent poles.
Nice.
So not standard tent poles, but if you go to an event and you see one of those covered areas where people have their booths.
Oh, like a big canopy.
Yeah, a canopy.
Okay.
So we had canopy that was basically going to be thrown away. So we got our hands on, and so we took all the poles on that and then just basically mounted the poles to a tripod. And it ended up working. We used it for our first 3 projects, 2 feature films and a web series.
Okay.
Yeah, so that one worked okay. You had to obviously rely on autofocus because we were just using like a handy cam for those projects, and we're like, hopefully the focus follows the right thing, and let's lift it up, let's drop it down. So it ended up being a lot of takes.
Because a fly would just go right in front of the camera, and then suddenly the camera's like, oh, I should look at this speck of dust that's right here instead of the person.
Exactly. Do you have any other DIY recommendations or don'ts you want to share with people?
I think those are the biggest things, I'll be honest with you. I love hardware stores, so this seems like a no-brainer to me. But if there's something that you're missing, just go to the hardware store, grab a bunch of different pieces, and just, have yourself a seat. Bring a coffee with you. A bunch of dogs will just walk by and you'll have friends to hang out with.
Good point.
And you can just start trying to build stuff that you don't have. So your tripod doesn't quite reach where you need it to. You need to attempt your own jib, dolly, or steady cam, like whatever you're looking for. Just
dig around a little bit.
Yeah, go play.
Something besides a Pelican case to hold all your equipment. You might be able to go around to hardware stores to find different waterproof cases and find different sizes of foam and kind of mess around with stuff. It'll take a lot more time, but you could save a pretty good chunk of cash.
That is something I should do because I still use a hiking backpack.
Oh, nice.
For my gear. So maybe I should do that.
Hey, as long as you got enough padding in there. So regrets, bad or cheap equipment purchases that we regret. I do have like 2 that are huge for me because over the last 10 to 12 years, we've shot so much, and every single tripod that we bought that wasn't that expensive has been thrown away.
Yeah, you can't cheap out on a tripod.
Sorry. So if you're just starting out, do yourself a favor and pay for a good tripod because it will last a very long time.
I'll be 100% honest with you. I will agree with that on the tripod head.
Oh, good point.
But I will say the tripod body itself, you can get away with a little bit more than you think because those legs are hollow. You can fill them with sand if it's not durable enough, it's not holding up enough, and you need a little bit more weight to it. You can't make the tripod head more fluid when it's not a fluid head.
Yes. So I guess there's the caveat too, is you want to make sure that you get a tripod that allows for a head to be replaced on it.
Oh yeah, if you don't, then you're totally just screwing yourself over.
Which is a different level of purchasing tripods because
that is very true. Okay,
because I bought some real cheap crap before, and basically it works for a few shoots, and then everything starts to fall apart. So it's not worth saving money there, and it's not worth cheaping out on boom poles either.
Yeah. Oh, I can't believe I didn't think of that one because the 2 poles that I have are just crap.
Yeah.
But I think I paid, $12 for them. Mm-hmm. So they work about how you would imagine audio gear that costs $12 would work.
And there are companies out there that will put their name on a boom pole that's inexpensive, and that does not matter. I'm thinking of my Rode boom pole.
Oh, yeah.
They make a light one, and I want to say it's like under $100. It's like 50 or something like that. And that thing just quit locking in place after one project.
Well, you don't need it to stay put.
No.
Your mic can just move through the whole shot, right?
It made things real interesting because I think it was mid-shoot on a feature film that it started to kind of like loosen up and not tighten. So if I had it at the wrong angle, the mic would just slide back into the boom pole, and it was like, okay, obviously this needs to be replaced. So just don't skimp on that stuff.
Yeah, I think my boom poles are now officially more gaff tape than metal.
Oh, Well,
Yeah.
I guess you can always fix things with gaff tape, I guess, in a pinch, but you don't want to be spending your mental capacity on that.
Yeah, but it still kind of shakes anytime it moves, and you can just hear that rattling around. And yes, it does pick up on the audio. Of course it does.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Not good stuff. Do you have any other regrets that you want to share as far as equipment purchases?
Boy, that sure feels like a lot of regret already.
Yeah.
Feels like a lot of regret.
Nothing else?
Are you wanting me to say that I regret my Canons? Because I do not.
Oh, I wasn't going to say that you would regret your Canons.
I love my Canons. You can pry them from my cold, dead hands.
We have a Panasonic versus Canon thing going on. If nobody out there would be aware of that, but I do feel like Canons are a little overpriced for what they offer when you can get a Lumix, which is more confusing in the menus. I will grant that. Their menus are very convoluted, but the thing is they have so many options and they're not as expensive. I'm just going to say.
I'm standing by the Canon.
I have one more thing to share with people as well, and that is for studio equipment. If you do sound stuff, Behringer makes some decent products, and they also make some really cheap products. And I have bought several small Behringer sound mixers to get me through in a pinch, and they do not work anymore. So just be careful if you're getting a sound mixer, if you're going to be doing some audio mixing in your studio. I would not skimp on sound mixers.
Yeah.
Especially if you're monitoring audio. And one good hack for that is if you do location sound and you do mix, currently my setup is to actually use my field recorder as my USB audio interface for mixing. And so then it's serving two purposes. It's dual purpose. Like if I'm doing location sound, I don't have it hooked up at my computer station anyway, so I can just pop it out and then record onto it, bring it back home, pop it in, plug in the monitors, which speaker monitors, and use it for sound mixing too. So don't buy the cheap, $50 mixers.
I'm just imagining that sounds like it's maybe comparable to the Behringer wine.
Ooh, the wine's great. I don't know what you're talking about. How much is that a bottle?
They have some that are good, but then they have some that are like, don't do that. If it's less than $8, don't do it.
Well, if you're buying wine for less than $8 a bottle, I think you're looking for the feature.
You're at grocery outlet and you might find a real winner or something you hate.
Actually, another hack. If you're at grocery outlet, bargain market, find the Portuguese wine. Oh, yeah. That's the one hack that I've found. If you're digging around those $6-7 bottles of wine, maybe you have a slow month when you're a freelancer and you can't afford the good stuff, then yes, if you find the Portuguese usually it's okay.
A little safer.
Yeah.
Okay.
California's got some good stuff, but it can be a little hit and miss. Portugal, I don't know what they got going on there, but they can send it over here for $6 a bottle and it's totally palatable.
Okay. We'll take that.
Should we get back to equipment?
Yeah, probably. Okay, so $2,000 to rig yourself out. What are you going to buy?
From scratch, right?
I assumed we were going from scratch.
Yeah, I realized I just kind of messed that up. So do you want to start out?
I can.
Okay.
I'm going to try to run through it quickly, though, because we're already at a fair amount of time here.
Sweet.
So
let's do it.
Let's make this one fun. Okay.
Cool.
If I only had $2,000, I would start with the Blackmagic 4K.
Okay.
I just think that the Pocket 4K.
Yeah.
I don't think it's lost that much image quality. It does get you everything you need. And realistically, anything that I'm shooting, I don't need to be above 4K.
Fair.
I can make good commercial stuff to fund myself and my projects for because it's about $1,000.
Yes.
So half my budget just went to that. Mm-hmm. I'm going to look on either pawn shops or lens rental sites for one telephoto lens, so I can get like a little bit of a longer lens. I want to be able to give that depth to my shots, and one that's a wider portrait somewhere in the 13, 16 millimeter. I guess that's a little bit wider than a portrait would be. A portrait would probably be closer to like 60, but whatever.
Yeah.
I want to be in that wider, so I have the ability to do nice, big establishing shots.
Okay.
That should cover everything I need in between. It may not be perfect for everything, but at least I'm going to be able to cover the most range. And I know I can treat that telephoto like a little bit more of a macro lens if I absolutely have to, and get some really fun artsy stuff, especially for commercial gigs. So that's what I'm going to do. I always skip on audio, obviously. So I'm going to get a really good on-camera mic.
Okay.
In the hopes that that's going to be good enough. And I know I can see it in your eyes right now that you're saying it's not. I can tell. I already know.
$2,000 is going to be next to impossible to do both audio and video well.
So I'm focusing on the video.
Right on.
Which, sorry, anyone who's like, I really needed audio suggestions. That's not, Chuck will have that for you, not me.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and then I'm going to spend money on a good tripod head, but a cheap tripod body.
Nice.
Because I can mod that body to fit what I need to. I can go fill sandbags myself. I can take pillowcases and turn them into sandbags. I do not have any qualms DIYing that stuff, but
you want the head to be smooth.
I want the tripod head to be smooth.
Nice.
Yep.
I just realized how hard it is to gear yourself out for $2,000.
It's really hard.
It's next to impossible. So I do have Pocket 4K. Those are $1,100 now. The reason I like that camera, you could get a used one.
Oh, I was looking at used.
You can get a used one for less than that. So I guess that's something to consider. The reason I like the new is that it does come with DaVinci Resolve Pro. And so you're already working on the footage that you gather in the environment that it was designed to be color graded and edited. So it's almost worth buying a new one because I don't know what DaVinci Resolve Studio costs at this juncture, but it's got to be a few $100s, I would imagine, at least for the key. So,
but you can get away with a lot in the free version.
True. So I guess I'll find a used one, because you could probably get one for like $800, I'm guessing.
I saw them for $890 something.
Okay.
Like $895, $897, something like that. So I rounded it up to $1,000 so that I wasn't lying for this exercise.
All right. Well, do what you can on the Pocket 4K because it is still really good quality. There's a 4/3 lens that I actually use that I love. It's the Lumix 12-35 f2.8, and you can find those used around $500. Okay. So if you're unfamiliar with micro 4/3, if you're unfamiliar with cameras, though, I don't know how much this helps, but it's like a 12-35 is roughly the equivalent of a 24 millimeter to 70 millimeter zoom lens. So $500. It's really good quality, honestly. Yeah. Like the clarity of the lens is great. And then I would go with Rode Wireless Pro lav mics. Yeah. If you're just starting out.
Okay.
And I'm not normally a huge fan of lav mics, but if you're running camera, the nice thing about the Rode Wireless Pro is that it comes with actual lav mics, not just those big boxes that you see them clipped on their shirts, which drives me crazy. Just
because they are all over TikTok.
Yes, just use some. It's called moleskin. Tape it to the actors or the talents underneath their shirt or right to their chest. Moleskin is kind of like a Band-Aid material.
Yeah, I think it's literally Band-Aid on the back. It's just got sort of a softer, almost felt like substance on the top.
So you can put it right on people's skin, put it on their sternum or hide it in their clothing somewhere underneath their collar, and you got good audio that you can then monitor through the wireless dongle into your Pocket 4K and then put your headphones on so that you can hear if there's any clothing rustling, and you can monitor your audio while you're recording.
Which is a big win.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that didn't leave any money for a tripod, which is kind of a bummer.
You've got the ground, you've got the trunk of your car, you've got shelves, you've got options.
And I'm going to say that Lumix 12-35 lens does have optical image stabilization. So if you can just hold real still.
There are actually tips and tricks. If you keep the camera, this was one of my favorite things. So the camera strap on and you pull it out away from your body as far as it'll go, and then rest your elbows on something that actually pulls enough tension to keep it a little bit more stable, and that is your go-to position whenever you do not have a tripod available. That should be your go-to stance. You've still got kind of like 3 points of tension holding this thing, and with the strap pulled tight the entire time, all of your movements will actually be a little bit smoother and softer anyway, so they won't be quite as painfully noticeable or jarring.
Nice.
So
nice.
That's a fun tip I learned.
I dig it. You can be just your own tripod. So
be your own tripod.
You didn't even need that there. So there's your $2,000-ish, but definitely focus on used. And I really like Blackmagic's cameras just because they are legitimate cinema cameras.
Yeah.
And they give you the feeling on how to set, the F/T stop, the shutter speed / shutter angle,
Yeah.
how to expose correctly. It gives you great exposure tools, and their screen is actually pretty decent that comes on the Pocket 4K.
It's actually not a bad little LCD monitor. So.
Which you're not going to get with, a hybrid camera, photo, video camera. It just doesn't exist. So I dig that for film specifically.
You know what I personally love that we both completely left out because I called myself out for leaving this out? Lights.
Oh,
Neither one of us budgeted any money for lights.
You just got to start by shooting at golden hour. You can get out there twice a day and practice.
Every single gaffer listening right now is so personally offended.
Yeah, they're like, I do way more than that. It's like, yeah, they do.
Yeah, they do.
So, yeah, lighting, that's tricky, but there are some ways to DIY some of that stuff and make sure you're near a window. And that's a whole different lesson that I am not at all able to edify people on.
I don't think anyone should ever take lighting advice from me. I think that would be a mistake.
It's tricky. It's tricky.
It's not great.
All I do is just blast this thing with light, and I'm like, oh, we got a black background anyway. If you're watching the podcast, it's just us exposed in front of a black background. And I'm like, that's the contrast you're getting. There it is. All right, anything else to add for this episode?
I think that feels pretty good. That's everything I have to say about MacGyvering your own film equipment.
Should we end with a succinct goodbye?
Absolutely.
Bye.
Bye.